Yep, still got you. Welcome to Exploring Catholicism. As about 4 years ago, the bishop asked me to coordinate the work that we're doing around the Beaver County area and the Wexford area and be a part of what we call the Great Grouping. Great, not because we deserve greatness, but great because God's great. And when he works through us, we can do great things. And speaking of that, we're going to have a great opportunity to meet one of the sons of our community and somebody whose sign I drive by every morning. And it's really exciting to be able to speak today to somebody who I got to watch play football at least two of his stages at Pitt Stadium, and then watching him win a Super Bowl. And it's a real blessing to be able to live in a community that has produced and brought forth such great men as somebody who we're going to meet in just a couple of seconds. And before they do that, I just wanted to set the stage for something I think that is so important. And that is, and it's something I've learned just even thinking about this interview today, about how important it is to constantly stay focused on the goals that God's placed in our hearts, despite the obstacles, despite the challenges. The Lord's given us the talents, that he's given us the strength and the grace to be able to see ourselves in his eyes and to be allowed him to really inspire us and to grace us with the greatness, because all greatness comes because we were blessed by a family, we're blessed with life, and we're blessed with our talents. And absolutely, we need to invest our talents and work hard in our talents, but none of that is possible unless we have the precious gift of faith and family. And let's face it, in a country that's willing to even, save us and to really rescue us and to offer their lives for us. And so it's so appropriate that just a couple of days ago, we celebrated Memorial Day, and living in Conway during Memorial Day is incredible, the amount of flags, and you see the faces of all these heroic soldiers, men and women who gave their lives for our freedom. It's so nice to be able to then bring in and interview a Jimbo Covert, who is obviously a son of Conway. And before we do that, I have a little transitional video, and then we're going to bring Jimbo Covert on the program.
It's been said that you can take the kid out of Conway, but you can't take the Conway out of the kid. And today's Covert is definitely an example of that. Son of John and Patricia Covert, born and raised in Conway, PA. He's one of four kids, married to a sweetheart college girl, golden girl, Penny, who he calls the glue of his family, father of two boys and a sweet little girl. Jimbo is recognized as the all-decade NFL team of the 80s. He won a Super Bowl with the Bears in '85. He forged with Dan Marino one of the greatest college teams of all time, especially one of the greatest at Pitt, including a Sugar Bowl championship in 1984. And after he beat the Bulldogs, it was as if that Bulldog, he was a Bulldog before that in freedom. And in 1977, his team was 11-0 and just a tremendous football career. And, what's interesting, at least for me, as we welcome Jimbo here, is that, with all these recognitions, he got a sign in Conway. He now has a field named after him. He's always been somebody who, when you hear about his family talk about it, he's somebody who's shy and just gets his work done. At any rate, Jimbo, welcome to the program. What's it like to have all these acclamations done for you? Did you ever imagine that when you were growing up?
No, not at all. Growing up in Conway, it's I think it's a great hometown to grow up in. I was really lucky, father. I had a great parents. And, I said in my Hall of Fame speech that, I didn't have far to look for role models. They were right down the hall. So, my dad worked at Armco Steel for, 34 years. My grandfather worked there for 44 years. My brother, my uncle, my brother-in-laws, most of my friends' dads worked in a steel mill or, Penn Central Railroad or Valvoline Oil. So, it's just a hardworking community, county. And when you see how hard your parents worked and strive to provide something better for you than they had themselves, I think it rubs off on you definitely as a kid, family, and been very supportive over the years. And I think that's what Conway's all about.
It really is what it's all about. Talk a little about your dad. What were some memories that you have with your dad, things that maybe helped you out in your life with your dad? You mentioned his hard work. What about some of the family things? I imagine he spent a lot of time at work, but what was that dynamic like between you and your dad?
I mean, it was great. I mean, my dad was my first role. He was a hardworking guy, and he would be, 1 week a month. He would come home from a night turn, get back on his road, deliver appliances for another 8 hours. And it's a huge impact on a kid when he's that young. See how hard your dad had to work and how many times my dad, played catch. But I just cherish those moments. And me and my brother always joke about dad that he was a coach. But we really enjoyed our time with my father. My mom was such a wonderful person, was raised Catholic, and very strong in her faith. And she converted from my dad to Presbyterian, Christian Missionary Alliance right there in Conway. But I think she always kept a piece of that inside of her. And when I would go see her mother all the time, we were reminded of that. So just great memories of my parents and what they were able to instill in me as a role model.
Now, we can't show the picture, but there's a great picture of you and your brother, I think, in the orange uniforms. I think the Conway pictures, something like that.
Oh, yeah, Conway Raiders.
The Conway Raiders, that's it. So there's John and Jimbo. We're actually able to put it up on somebody who can see this. But, John was 8, you were 10. Talk a little bit about your relationship with your brother.
My brother's 11 months older than me. So when your brother's 11 months older than you, there's definitely been some fights in our house, and my dad would always say, take it outside. It was we were pretty rough on each other, but over the years, and but it was always close, as brothers are. We played sports together, played out in the yard together. I always tell the story that, we had a little bit of a side yard and on Catherine Drive there, and played football all the time. And, J.D. Haglin was kind of my hero growing up, Freedom High School quarterback, played at Clemson. And, he would come over to the yard, and we would play with Jim McCullough and the Oakses and the whole Conway crew there up on the hill and play football. And we'd pick up teams, and if JD didn't pick me on his team, I would cry, because I know that if I was on his team, we would win. so pretty competitive at a young age, even just wanted to win and loved football. And it's taught me so much about life.
Talk about your time at Freedom High School. I've heard you talk about your dear coach there and how much you respected him. I think his name was Chuck Lucidor. What was that like? You obviously go to high school. You guys were 11-0 the one year. What do you remember when you think back to your high school days and a coach like that?
Well, Chuck, you know what? Chuck Lucifer was a great coach, and he just made you love football again. And prior to that, we had a coach that kind of made it a little bit miserable. And that's not what football's about. Football is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. You're supposed to want to go out and practice. You're supposed to want to go out and play games. And if it's drudgery, no one wants to do that. So he just made football fun again. And, all the drills we did, all the conditioning we did, he just made it fun. And, the year before when I was a junior, I think we were 2-7-1. We weren't very good. But we only had a couple seniors on that team. And he ended up, the next year we ended up going undefeated just because of, not only the talent we had there, but just the love of the game and the competition. And, he brought everybody together. He's just a special person.
Yeah. And, when you drive around Conway and you see Freedom, it's such a small town. It's amazing that, the way you guys were able to be, champions, basically, is going undefeated there. One of the things that fascinates me, the first time I went to Conway, I'm not from Conway, I live there now, were the rabbits that are running around the community. And one of your relatives told me about the way, is it your grandfather or one of your grandparents said, you can chase rabbits with salt shakers? Do you know the story behind that? I just never knew that was possible.
No, my grandfather used to have an old wives' tale that he would tell us when we were kids, that if you chased around a rabbit and you put salt on his tail, you could catch it. So me and my cousins and my brother and my sisters would run around the yard trying to chase rabbits with a salt shaker, put salt on his tail, and you could catch it. But we never caught one. So old wives' tale. But it kept us busy in the summertime, that's for sure.
That's what I was thinking it was about. It's like, if you could get salt on the rabbit, that would be quite a feat.
Exactly.
I live next to Northern Shopping Center, and there's no doubt that Beaver County is going through a real renaissance and an adjustment. But what do you remember about Northern Shopping Center there, and some of the Conway iconic places there? I think you used to refer to J.C. Penney in a French term or something like that, or I don't know. Back in your day, it was different the way it was today, right?
Yeah, my mom used to work at J.C. Penney part-time, so we used to call it J.C. Penney, to make it sound more exotic. You want to have clothes there. Every stitch of clothing that we owned was from J.C. Penney. And, my brother and I used to, have, you get your clothes for school and you get a new pair of tennis shoes, but we had to get the J.C. Penney tennis shoes, and we hated them because they were kind of looking like Converse, So remember we begged my dad to get, a pair of Converse, all-star low tops. And we went down to Saul's in Rochester, and my dad bought 2 pairs of tennis shoes, one for me and one for my brother. And I never forget when we got to the counter, we wore them out, of course, because our other shoes were pretty raggedy, and we wore them out. And I remember my dad saying, "Boys, now you better take care of those shoes because they're very expensive." And they were $9.99 a pair. And that was expensive, back in 1970, right? So, I mean, it's quite a memory.
That's awesome. Now, was it your grandma or your grandpa that used to do some type of an evangelism flannel grass? What was that about? Do you remember anything like that?
That was my grandma. Yeah, you're getting all the stories from Drill Ann. Yeah, my grandmother taught Sunday school at Christian Missionary Alliance. So she used to have a flannel board, and a felt board, I should say what it was, a felt board. And so the felt board, she would tell stories from the Bible that she would illustrate on this felt board, and she had little cutout characters. So when they would do Christmas, she would have Jesus, the manger, Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus,
wow,
wise men, all in little felt characters, right? Star,
yeah,
David, the whole 9 yards,
wow,
Christmas star. And then she'd have, and then she'd do the same thing with, Moses and and Noah. And she told all these great stories, but she illustrated it on this felt board, which is really cool. So when she was doing a new lesson, she would try it out on us first, just to see if it worked. And we'd have to sit there and watch it, but we loved it, so it was a lot of fun.
How do you think, Jimbo, that experience with your family and in football there early on helped you then maintain your focus when you would become a huge football star? Like, you think back to those roots, do they still influence what you're doing now and what you did in your career?
You know what? That's a great question. I think that that your upbringing and how you're raised has a tremendous impact on your life, and in the way you're developed as a person, as an adult. And I was so fortunate to, like I said, have great role models and parents, and my grandparents, my cousins, my brother and sister, just wonderful people around you, raised the same way. And there's just a value system that you kind of obtain when you're raised in that environment. And I was just so fortunate to be raised in an environment like that. So I just think it impacts you in so many ways as you're an adult. One thing I've always tried to impress on my kids as well is my parents were very strict on manners. When you would go out to dinner, you said please and thank you. You put the napkin on your lap. You were courteous to everybody that you met. And my kids say the same thing now because I was able to pass that along to them. So I was really, really fortunate to learn that from my parents and grandparents, and it sticks with you.
Yeah, it really does. And especially today, where some of those values don't seem to be as common as they used to be. It's almost like common sense isn't very common anymore. It really does. It's good to be able to go back to those basic things that forge ahead what a good person could be. Like, you once said that I don't think I've proven you're only as good as your last game. I try to think of myself as steady, but there's always room for improvement. If you can't see room for improvement, it's time to get out. Do you think that was something, a part of your background in Conway, being a part of a family that really had to work hard to get ahead?
No, I think so. I think it's part of your work ethic, and I also think it's part of your life. If you're not improving in your life and setting goals for your life, then I think you're just standing still. You're not moving forward. And life's all about moving forward. And there's changes in your life, and things that you can control, you have to control. Things that are out of your control, they're kind of there, and you can't really do anything about that. But you can definitely, things you can control, you can definitely do something about. I always said that no one was going to outwork me. And, if I can work, I'm going to work harder than everybody I possibly can in front of me or around me. And that's what I tried to do.
Yeah, it reminds me a little of the it's the 12-step serenity prayer, which is that sense of really having the courage to change the things you can't, the serenity to accept the things you can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. And especially in a focused position like you're playing tackle, you're not going to be throwing the football, but you can block the guy in front, right?
Yeah, you can, and like I said, things you can control that are in your sphere of influence. You got to do everything you can do to change that environment, to improve yourself and move forward. Things you can't. So I've just tried to learn that in life, and I'm just constantly moving forward and trying to get better every day, because that's what God put you on this earth to do. Not to stand in one place. So that's what I've tried to always live my life by.
Oh, it's great. Just the other day, we're celebrating the Ascension Thursday, which is one of my favorite feast days. And in that, the angels call out the apostles because they're all standing around looking up at the sky. And the angel's like, why are you guys standing here staring. It's like, get out to the world. You got a mission to do now. It's like, you're not made to be standing around. Come on. And in Latin, it's Viri Galilei. It's like, Mene Gali, what are you doing standing around here? It's time to get to work now, you know? When did you maybe hit it that I can really make it big in football? Was it a time in high school? Because I believe, you know, Joe Paterno, you had Ohio State, you had Pitt, you had all these amazing football programs coming to, you know, Conway or to Freedom for football. Was there a moment where you're like, wow, I think I can actually get to the next level?
Yeah, I don't think it was in high school, Father. I think it was more when I got to Pitt. You know, I saw guys that were getting drafted when I was like a freshman and sophomore. They were getting drafted in the NFL, and I was like, kicking their butts in practice, so that I could do the same thing. So I'm 19 years old, and I had an opportunity to play the next level, and I just worked as hard as I possibly could to get there. And then I was really fortunate because, you know, when I moved the offensive line from defensive line, and, you know, I just had such a great coach in Joe Moore, and he just he was a rough guy to play for, but, you know, he was just a wonderful caring person, and expected the best out of you. And when he moved me to offensive line after my first practice in spring, he said, "You're going to be an All-American someday." You know, and if he could have said anything, could have said you're lousy, I probably would have been lousy from that point forward. But I just think that's the power of, you know, just positive reinforcement and coaching in a positive way. Because, you know, when you a positive word and reinforcement and encouragement goes a lot further than fear and intimidation coaching. And I just responded to that. Now, I'm not saying after that I switched over there and played for him for 3 years that I never, you know, had a harsh word to me said to me. Of course I did, but it was only really meant for, you know, for me, and wanted me to be the best that I could. And he would always say things like, "Do you want to be good or you want to be the best? Do you want to be a great player or do you want to be a good player?" And I always wanted to be a great player. And he'd say, "Here's the things you have to do to be a great player. And if you just want to be good, then fine. But if you want to be great, here's what you have to do." And so positive reinforcement goes a long way.
Yeah, I could imagine. Was Joe Moore an older guy then? Who was Joe Moore, for those who might not know who Joe Moore is?
Joe Moore was an offensive line coach at Pitt. He was a high school football coach that grew up in the Pittsburgh area and took one of his first big jobs was in Erie. They won all kinds of state championships up there. And then he came back to Upper St. Clair, and they won some WPL championships. And then Jackie Sherrill hired him as running back coach at Pitt. And then there was some, you know, moving around of some staff, and Jimmy Johnson was a coach and took some of the staff and went to Oklahoma State. And then they made Joe Moore the offensive line coach. Just happened to coincide with my move to the offensive line. So I was really just fortunate enough to be part of that. And I mean, I owe my whole career to him. I mean, he made me the player that I was, and just fortunate to play for a guy like him.
Yeah, you know, so I'm just full disclosure, I'm a Central Catholic guy, so I've always, you know, I've been able to watch Dan Marino play in different levels as I got to watch you play at Pitt and obviously see in the NFL. Transition a little bit from the coach there. What was it like to play with Dan Marino and the team that you were on? I used to love going to Pitt Stadium watching that, but Danny was a special talent, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was such a great player. And, you know, Dan and I are best friends today. He was my roommate at Pitt, him and Paul Dunn and myself. And, you know, we rarely ate in the dorm my junior and senior year. We rarely ate at the Marinos on Parkview Avenue in Oakland.
Yeah, sure.
And we just, you know, Dan Sr. and Veronica, you know, Dan was a wonderful person. Veronica's a wonderful person. You know, that whole family. Cindy, and unfortunately Debbie passed away. But it's, that family was just had such a big impact on me. They were like my Pittsburgh parents. So really fortunate to have them. But Dan was such a great player and just made us so much better the day he stepped on the football field. And, the rest is history. He's going down in history as one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played the game. So just fortunate to be part of that.
And in your position, for those who aren't very familiar with offensive line, is a right-handed quarterback, you're covering his blind side, right? So can you talk a little bit about the role that you would have played at Pitt once you went from defensive line to offensive line? You were protecting Dan Marino from getting a blindside hit. Is that right?
Yep. And so it's a big responsibility to play left tackle. I'm a little biased, but, I'd say it's the most difficult position to play on offense other than quarterback, because not only is it a physically demanding position because you're playing against, most of the best athletes on defense are, the right defensive ends and the right outside linebackers. So you're playing against the best athletes there. But you have an enormous responsibility because you're right, in a right-handed quarterback, that's his blind side. And, if a guy has a free shot at him, he can take him out of the football game pretty easily. And you're basically done. So it's a big responsibility. I was very fortunate. I played it in high school. And then when they converted me over, I had a little bit of a learning curve, but was pretty quick to catch up and just enjoyed playing it my whole career all the way through the NFL.
Yeah, I have to admit, I used to love going to the Pitt games and hear Hugh Green. And so you got to play against him in practice, right? Because he was a great linebacker.
Yeah, Hugh Green and Ricky Jackson, and Hugh on my side. But Hugh had a lot to do with my development as well as an offensive tackle, because that whole summer before my sophomore year, as Hugh's going into Hugh's senior year, we really worked out a lot at Pitt Stadium doing one-on-one pass rushes. And, I just felt like if I could block Hugh Green and stay in front of Hugh Green, then, I could block anybody. So really worked on my footwork and really worked on speed, on my pass set, and was able to get there a lot quicker because of playing against someone like Hugh Green. So he was kind of my hero. And, when he was a freshman, freshman All-American, and was such a great player, and his number was 99. So when I first went to Pitt, my number was 98 for the first year on defense. And then they moved me to offensive line. So I had to give that number up. But he was a great friend and really had a big impact on me too.
Yeah, I could imagine. One more thing. A couple more things. So I was a little boy watching the Pitt Georgia game. What were you thinking at the end? Do you remember that last play where basically you talk about the ultimate Hail Mary? Marino throws to the tight end and they win the game basically at the end, beating Georgia in a pretty good upset, you'd say. Do you remember that play? What was that like for you?
Well, I just know that we wanted to, win the game. And, I know when they got on the sidelines, Coach Sherrill said, we can play for the tie here. We can go down and kick a field goal and play for the tie. And Danny said, we didn't come here to tie the football game. We came here to win the football game. So he came back in the huddle and said, we're going to throw it. And long and, one-on-one, one-on-one with John Brown going down the middle of the field. And, and then they had a blitz going on, which left it one-on-one. So great throw by Danny and great catch by John. It just kind of lives in Pitt lore of a great win. So, being part of that was pretty special.
Yeah, I can say. But definitely the greatest part of Pitt for you is you found your wife there. What was it like meeting her for the first time, and how soon into the relationship did you see that this golden girl was going to be your wife?
Well, she was a cheerleader, not a golden girl, but she would differentiate that with your father if she was on
okay.
The
well, then I know my football stuff. I don't know my dancing and cheerleading, so I'll take that one.
I know that. I don't know it either, but I know that enough to differentiate that. But No, she was a cheerleader, and it took me a while to get the nerve to go up and talk to her, and because she was a couple years older than me, 2 years older than me, so I finally got the courage to go up and talk to her. But the first time I met her, I was dating a friend of hers, and she didn't like me very much. The first time I met her was really kind of just an off chance meeting, and she wasn't really fond of me. So when I had an opportunity to talk to her, I was out on the town with Emo Boers, and I got a chance to meet her, and then that was 1st of March in 1980. And I knew pretty quickly after that it was going to be something special. So, been together ever since.
Yeah. What was it like when you were able to actually propose marriage to her and she said yes?
It's been so long ago, Father. I got to remember all this stuff. So
Okay.
we kind of knew that we wanted to get married probably a year year and a half before that, maybe 2 years. But I was still in school, she was working, she was teaching, and it was just like, what's the timing? And then with the uncertainty of where we were going to go in the draft, like what city we were going to go to, right? So all this kind of was playing into it, and then so there wasn't just like a moment. It was just kind of, we just felt that way about each other, that we knew we were going to get married. And then 1980, May 14th, 1983, we got married at the University Club in Pittsburgh. Wow. With all my teammates. And it was great. And we had no money, so I had to borrow some money off my agent to pay for the wedding, and then pay for the service. And then we flew down to Florida on People's Express airline. I think the ticket was like $80 or something. So, that first year was quite interesting, because we came back and stayed with my mom and dad in Conway, and then I ended up holding out for a couple of days and just trying to get my contract negotiated, and finally got it done. So then we moved to Chicago in July of 1983, and got an apartment, and just raised the kids there. And Chicago is such a great town because it's very similar to Pittsburgh. There are a lot of ethnic neighborhoods, love football. Even though the Bulls won 6 championships and, the Blackhawks won, 3 or 4 Stanley Cups, it's still a Bears town. And that's the great thing about Chicago.
Yeah, it must be. I've been blessed to start a marriage foundation. It just warms my heart to think that somebody like you and your dear wife can raise 3 kids in an environment that's not always conducive for that. Not that your marriage is perfect. I'm sure you have your challenges just as anyone, but if you were, if you're talking to a young guy coming out of college, about to get married, follow the same footsteps as you did, how would you, recommend for them to stay faithful to their wife and to their family values? Anything that, if you look back now, what would you tell your younger self, getting drafted out of Pitt, going to the Bears?
It's such a broad question, on how how relationships are built. I mean, obviously, there's room for improvement in relationships, and, how you can be better. I don't know. I just think it's about communication and not keeping things from each other, and trying to be honest and work through issues that happen. And, I always say that my wife and I never really have any cross words with one another. All the times we've been married.
Wow.
Really, the only time we've ever really gotten in arguments, and we've had, like every other couple, has been over the kids and disagreements on, things that I think maybe we should have done and things maybe she thinks we should have done. And, from raising your kids, and then, just like houses, and I want to do this kitchen again, and I want to do this again, and I want to do that. And, a lot of times I have to say, no, you can't do that. So things like that, that's really the only time we ever get in disagreements, and arguments about things. And it's not really about us or, how we treat each other. It's more about, outside influence. So.
Right.
There's a lot of
brag
things
a
in
little bit
marriages
about
that impact it. That's certainly one of them. And go ahead.
Brag a little bit about your kids. I know the one dear daughter of yours has had a battle with spina bifida, but your other boys, just give us a little flavor of what it's like to be raising 3 kids.
I got great kids. And, I've had some struggle. There's been some struggles with them over the years, raising kids. My oldest is a handful, but Casey's been through a lot, and he's doing great now. He's, been and back, and now he's settled in Chicago and doing great. He's in a relationship now, and happy for him because he had several other ones that, maybe thought we're going to get married and they didn't. So he's really kind of has calmed down a little bit in that respect. And then Jessica, our middle one, was born with spina bifida, and she had her challenges physically. And I think the toughest thing about having a disability is, there's societal issues that impact a person and how they're treated by, their classmates, other people, and just because they're different. And, that's a difficult thing sometimes. And she's had to deal with all those. And I've seen her struggle with that. And we try to support her any way we can. But, when you got bullying by classmates because you're different is really hard, especially on, 4th and 5th, 6th graders. And I never experienced anything like that. And so I was really heartbroken over it. But, she was able to overcome that. She's a strong person and made her really strong. And now she's married and having a great life, and so proud of her and happy for her. And, it takes a strong person to do that. I think she's the strongest person I've ever met, because I don't know if I could have handled any of that, all that through the years. And then Scott, our youngest, was a football player and played at, Lake Forest High School, then played at Iowa, and then finished his career at, California University down in California, Pennsylvania, and really loved football and tried the coaching thing, but, just wasn't his cup of tea. I was glad to see that he got out of that, and, working full time as a salesperson. So I'm really proud of my kids. They've done a great job, and sometimes, I think it might be difficult, having a father that might cast a little bit long shadow, but they were able to, overcome that. I'm so proud of them.
If you wouldn't mind circling back to Jessica, it struck me that when you and your wife found out about this at the birth, I think it was a July birth when she was born, you said, Penny and I have a strong faith, a very strong faith, and that prayer was very important to this. And then you said that Jessica is a miracle from God. What role did your faith or prayer have in seeing that your little girl was actually a miracle from God, despite the fact that she would have these special needs?
I mean, it was really important to us. And, once we found out about Jessica, going to be born with spina bifida. And it was really an emotional time for my wife and I, because, you know, raising a child that has disabilities, I mean, we didn't know. We read all then you start reading all kinds of
Sorry about that. Some difficulties there. It's been so great to be able to sit down with Jimbo and talk. He was telling me, I hope this isn't news, maybe it is, that he's in the process of moving his family. And so when we had coordinated this, he didn't realize it was at the same moment that he's moving from one state to another. But, you know, as I reflect upon what he's been saying, and I think what I've felt in doing research for this is that it's incredible the way he's able to kind of achieve the American dream for any boy growing up in Pittsburgh or in the Western PA area who didn't want to be a football player and play at Pitt and then be able to be drafted. And you know, he's a very humble man. As I go through some of these things, I could spend a long time with him on some of that. But being drafted in the first round, I mean, being considered probably one of the greatest.
Where'd you lose?
Oh, good, you're back.
You're
Okay,
back. When I lost you at the beginning when I asked you about your dear little daughter Jessica, and then you know, about like the faith that you and your wife had to really be able to see that she's a miracle from God.
Yeah, sure. You know, when Jessica was born, it was difficult. You know, we knew that she was going to have some problems, but we didn't know the extent of what that is. And when you think about it, back then, there wasn't the internet. You know, there wasn't anything like that. So all the information that we got was really from the doctors and the library, and we did as much research as we possibly could about spina bifida and hydrocephalus that comes along with that, all the surgeries, and it's scary stuff, you know, when you read all that. And so we were really just kind of freaked a little bit. And, you know, we just leaned on God and prayed as much as we possibly could, because we just felt like that, you know, it was in his hands. And, you know, that was really our pathway to just kind of having Jessica, you know, survive all this. And then when she was in the hospital, she was in ICU. She had an episode where she had a breathing problem. So she's in ICU for about 21 days. And I never left her side. Penny was in a different hospital. And, you know, I was just there, and I just kept whispering in her ear that, you know, Jesus was going to protect her, and he was going to pull her through this. And every day I whispered it in her ear probably 100 times, just because, you know, she was intubated and couldn't respond. Couldn't even cry. So it was a little bit difficult for me emotionally, but, you know, we got through that. And then when Penny, you know, was out of the hospital after giving birth, we were able to be there together, and it was pretty emotional time. But she's married and doing great, and you know, she has some physical, you know, drawbacks and some limitations, but she's cognitively just like you or I. So it's a miracle, and we are just, you know, so thankful to God for, you know, getting us through that.
I love that, Jimbo, that you would whisper into her ears that Jesus is going to protect her, and what you said, like you and your wife just leaned on God. To me, as a priest, there's no doubt that our human nature can take us up to a certain limit, but we can't get to heaven. We can't conquer some of the life's biggest challenges without divine grace. And I would say you probably can't even live or breathe without it. But it's that recognition that, for me, is just it just gave me chills hearing you say that. So to hear that, it's just it's awesome. I would love to dwell on that for the rest of the call, but I just really want to thank you for that. Talk to me a little about your decision, you and your wife, a couple of years ago, to take the journey to step into our Catholic faith, or to go from your Christian background into a Catholic Christian background about 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of felt drawn to the Catholic Church. When I was at Pitt, Danny and I and Paul Dunn used to go to Mass, and they're both Catholic, and I think it's St. Paul's right in Oakland, right? And we used to go there.
That's our cathedral.
Yeah, and we used to go there, and we go Sunday nights too. And I just kind of felt like drawn to that. Coming from Christian Missionary Alliance, a little bit different, and a little bit different. And then when I met Penny, she was Episcopalian, and so we kind of raised our kids that way. But then I just kind of got turned off by some of the decisions that the Episcopalian Church was making, and just didn't feel like, it was somewhere that I wanted to continue at. And then, we decided several years ago to convert. And Father Chris, who is a really good friend of mine, and he's a member at my golf club in Chicago, brought me in and, into the church, and I went through the catechism. My wife and I both did, and learned so much about the saints and, Catholicism in general. And, that the similarities between, just the Christian faith, or, the Christian Missionary Alliance Church and Catholicism is not that much different.
Exactly.
I think people think it is, but it's really not. The church is centered around Jesus Christ, and
Amen.
Both faiths are. And I read a book called The Rediscovering Catholicism, and thought it was, even though I was not Catholic, I just thought it was just a revelation to me, and just really enjoyed it. And it was during the pandemic, so I had it on my iPhone, on the book, and I just would walk and get taught, and I just really enjoyed it. So it was really, really a great experience for my wife and I, and just enjoying it.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a great step.
Thank you.
And it's interesting to hear about that type of Matthew Kelly's book, and how that's exactly what I think we all need to be curious about our faith, and to see, where's the Lord leading me at different steps. And so that's wonderful. And I'm also glad that you're able to receive communion and receive the Eucharist, because to me, that's why I became a priest, is just to be able to be as close as I can to Jesus, is the closest you can get to heaven on earth,
Yeah, and it's like I said, I just felt closer to that religion, and like I said, more drawn to it, and that's kind of why we both converted. My wife was very strong Episcopalian, and like I said, we just both had some disagreements, and just felt like some of the direction at the higher level was just not something we really didn't like. So it was a great move at the time, and I'm just so thankful for it. And the church is so welcoming, and the Catholic Church is very welcoming, and it's just been a great experience for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's awesome. Switching gears real quickly, I just couldn't be, a big football fan. What was it like to win a Super Bowl? And play with guys like Walter Payton, Richard Dent. These guys just, to me, were giants when I was growing up. And you're part of that great football team that won the Super Bowl. What are some of the memories you have? I know you probably go on forever. Is something that sticks out in your mind about like the moment that you're like, wow, we actually won the Super Bowl?
Well, you had to throw that when I was growing up thing again, Father, for the second time.
You know,
I'm not that
almost
old.
50.
I'm not that old yet.
I was born in 1972, so you know you can see like.
No, you know, I was so fortunate to get drafted by the Bears. When I first got there, I didn't think I was really, you know, was a place I wanted to be. I mean, the only person I knew on the team was Walter Payton and knew of. So, and then we lost more games in like my first 7 weeks than I lost in 3 years I started at Pitt. I was like, whoa, maybe this isn't the right place for me to be. But, you know, another Beaver kind of guy, Mike Ditka, just wouldn't let that, you know, he willed us to be better. I mean, there was a good nucleus of players there, but then when the 83 draft came in and, you know, it was me and Willie Gault, Richard Dent, Dave Dorison, Mike Richardson, Mark Bortz, you know, it's just that whole nucleus, I think, kind of took us over the top. And, you know, you talk about guys that already had there, like guys like Walter Payton. I mean, just it's a phenomenal person. I miss him every day. I mean, the sun, it just seemed like the sun would shine around him all the time. You know, he was just a bright personality, and you know, he talked to you. He had such a gift. You know, he had a gift where it didn't matter if you were a first-round pick or a free agent. You know, he would talk to you and treat you the same, and talk to you like you were the most important person in his life at that time, and that's a gift to do that. So, genuinely cared about people and his teammates, and he's such a great leader. I just really learned a lot from him. I became very close with him over the years. And then when he died, it was pretty emotional for all of us because he's such a wonderful person. So I just miss him every day.
Yeah, I could imagine. Before we go, you know, you've been obviously trying to save quarterbacks from getting crushed. But I think professionally it's interesting where you've gone afterwards, and I could be wrong about this, but it seems like you've been leaning into helping people with blood transfusion and getting people a chance to be able to continue their lives through different life-saving type of products. Are you still involved in that, or is there anything in there that you'd like to talk about? Because for me, it's just really beautiful to see how your life has kind of been about trying to protect and save others. You mentioned that about your little daughter. You obviously do that with your wife and your family and your quarterbacks, but it seems like you've expanded that even though you're not playing football anymore.
You know what? I was in that business for 10 years. I was president and CEO of a company called Institute for Transfusion Medicine. I'm no longer there. We ended up merging the company with another, you know, strategic player in the industry. But no, it was a great business, and it's just helped so many lives and works with the hospitals, and, you know, just provides life-saving blood products, you know, red cells, plasma, platelets for people in need. And it's just a great business. And now in the private equity healthcare business, which I'm in now, you know, it's a healthcare business, and, you know, it's not nonprofit like the ITXM business, but it really just, you know, we try to build, you know, great healthcare companies, and you know, and number one, have the quality of care there and patient care, number one. And when you do that and you put the patients first and the quality of care first in any business that you might acquire and try to build, you know, that's the number one component to success is, you know, patient care and quality. And that's what we try to do, is build good quality healthcare companies and grow them.
Well, I appreciate it. I know that you're traveling with your dog in your car right now as you're doing this interview, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. I woke up last night.
I apologize, Father, for not being on camera, but it just happened to be one of those days where my schedule got goofy, and we've had to move this around several times, and I didn't want to do it again. So I just want to make sure we connected and got a chance to talk.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm honored. I was going to say last night I woke up at like 3 a.m. thinking I'm going to be able to talk to one of the football stars I saw as a little, well, I won't say I was a little boy, a fan that I am. And if you ever come to Conway, I'd love to take you out to Conway Pizza or go to the lounge there, get a beer and have a piece of pizza. But I'm just so grateful for the journey that you shared with us, and your family continues to inspire me. And your cousin she's just a wonderful lady who's just been singing her way through the churches here at Pittsburgh and inspiring our faith. So again, just I'm honored to be able to live in Conway and be able to see that sign of yours there. So praying for you. I'm really grateful that you would come on the program today.
Thank you, Father. I enjoyed it, and I'll definitely make sure to stop in when I get back home.
Okay. God bless. Safe travels.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
So I appreciate the conversation there with Jimbo. As you can tell, my heart vacillates between my love for sports and the love for our faith. And I probably shouldn't say it vacillates, but it just gets a little different sometimes. And so it's fun to see that relationship. I've always felt like there's a theological, well, St. Paul talked about it, right? Like running the great race and the trophy and all that. And so you can see in scripture that it's okay to let our hearts feel that real love for sports. And then at the same time, be able to draw so many life lessons about that, and then to transition that into challenging ourselves to wondering, do I ever get complacent or it just stays stale in something? I love that quote that Jimbo said about, like, you can never really rest and just hope that you're in a good shape. And I think the question, it's time to get out if you don't see room for improvement. And so very grateful for the time that he got to spend with us. And I apologize for some of the little rough edges on some of the interview part, but that's what happens today with technology. It's all great. And hopefully that you're able to get out as much as I am from being able to talk to Jimbo and be able to witness that. I appreciate his family, obviously his wife and his staff that got that arranged for us. Appreciate Lee and Angie behind the scenes who have been scrambling around to try to make this work. So there's no doubt that is a blessing. Next week, I invite one of my buddies on, Father Levi Hartle, and he's going to come over with Joe Jacobs, the Praise Nation. And this, I'm looking forward to this. It'll be June 9th at 2 p.m. on Thursday. We might even have some live music for you. And before I go, just give my blessing. The Lord be with you and with your spirit. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.